off on what might easily have been a wild romantic lark. But almost before they knew it, with the giggles still in their ears, they had bloodied up 4 states.
Just figured on some easy pickings, didn't you, Frank? You know, Texas Ranger, you ain't hardly doing your job. You ought to be home protecting the rats and poor folk, not out chasing after us. I know. Don't take the question. Look, what do you want to do with him then? Hang him. I don't know.
Take his picture. And then everybody's going to see Captain Frank Hammer of the Texas Rangers with the Barra Gang. Now, you know, we are just about the friendliest folks you would ever want to meet.
Hey, Buck. Yeah. Get the Kodak. Doggies! Hold it!
That's Bonnie, Faye Dunaway. That's Clyde, Warren Beatty.
Hello, and welcome back to Dave's Movie Diary. Bonnie and Clyde, 1967, the film that changed the way movies were made. It's a big call, isn't it? It's a statement that you hear around a lot. If you're into film and you read a lot of books that have been written about the topic, about how Hollywood was bloated leading up to 1967, and then this came out and changed everything. It's probably true when you connect all the dots, but apart from that, it's just a great watch, and it doesn't feel like it's coming up to 60 years old. The story, for anyone who's unfamiliar with it, it follows the real-life Depression-era outlaws Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow, who were 2 restless young Texans who met almost by accident and immediately connect. And I mean they connect. You can see it in their eyes. What starts with some small robberies for adrenaline and sex appeal. Well, yeah, sex is something that's quite interesting in this film. I'll get onto that. Anyway, that escalates into some bank jobs, and then the police are all over them, and there's the gang that's built up involving some family members. Some interesting dynamics there, and some drifters as well. As their notoriety grows, they become folk heroes during the Great Depression, particularly among working people struggling through hard times. And you see some examples of that. It's nearly like that kind of Robin Hood kind of ethic. But underneath all the excitement, there's always the sense that this lifestyle can only end one way. So yeah, it really did change Hollywood, this one. When you have a look at the other films from this period that came out this year and that had been coming out for a few years in the sort of early 60s to mid 60s, the big studios that ran Hollywood back then were really, really losing the plot. And by that I mean they weren't connecting with their audience. They were only making films for a small segment of the audience. Some of the other films that came out this year included Camelot and Dr. Dolittle. They were very big productions, costing a lot of money, with using fading stars, and they went for 2.5 hours. And this wasn't anything new. If you look at the films that were coming out in the early 60s, they'd really gravitated to like Roman epics, Cleopatra, biblical stories being told. It nearly seemed as though Hollywood had run out of ideas and was looking back into the past. Then this film came along, and yes, even though it's looking back to the 1930s, the early 1930s, it's the way that this story is told that really heralds something exciting, fresh, that's made for much younger audiences, or those older folks who are looking for something edgy. if you look at it, it's got some young up and coming stars right at the cusp of when they're just about to break. Warren Beatty, Faye Dunaway, even a young Gene Hackman. It's got sex appeal. It's got violence, plenty of violence, anti-authority themes, lots of fast editing, unpredictable energy. You can literally feel cinema changing in real time when you watch this. And look what happens immediately afterwards. 1968, you get Rosemary's Baby. You get 2001, A Space Odyssey. Vastly different films, but very, very edgy, very dangerous in Rosemary's Baby's case. 2001 was just years ahead of its time. 69, you get Midnight Cowboy, The Wild Bunch, and then we're off and running. Into the 70s, Scorsese's around the corner. De Palma's starting out. George Lucas isn't far away either. Spielberg. If you compare the films that these younger directors were making compared to the bloated old Hollywood system, chalk and cheese. So this film really, it didn't just help kick the door down. It was the one that sledgehammered its way in. Arthur Penn really has to take a lot of the credit for that. He directed this film, and it's a very brave effort. It's quite a loose directing style. It's all over the place, but that's part of the appeal. I really noticed the visual texture of this film. Penn uses these really beautiful, dusty, sun-bleached color tones that for me perfectly captured the settings and the landscapes. So we're talking about Texas here. We're talking about Oklahoma, Missouri, that sort of country dynamic. Everything feels really dry and weathered and worn down. You've got the faded browns and the dirt roads. You've got to remember, this is the Depression. There's broken timber buildings, houses being repossessed, old forgotten towns. Perfectly reflects that Depression era in America. I'd really love to know where Arthur Penn found these old towns. They look so derelict. This environment really becomes an important part of the storytelling. For me, I really felt like the people that we're following, Bonnie and Clyde and their gang, really drifting through some forgotten parts of America. It's quite eerie. Anyway, this one's really made me want to revisit more of Arthur Penn's work, because to me, he really feels like one of the directors who bridged this gap between old Hollywood and like the far more adventurous filmmaking of the 1970s. But I feel like he's one of these guys that doesn't get recognized. We hear about Scorsese, we hear about Robert Altman, we hear about Peckinpah, De Palma, like I said, and then on into the really big, the guys who made it big initially in the 70s, like Spielberg and George Lucas and plenty of others. But I don't know, this guy seems to get forgotten, which is incredible when you look at what he made. Before this, he'd made The Miracle Worker. I haven't seen that film, but it's well known. This film, Little Big Man with Dustin Hoffman, a couple of years later, that's a really good film. I've read the novel of that too. It's an incredible story. He reteams up with Hackman in '75 with Night Moves, which is a really it's a risky film too for some other reasons, chiefly around, I think that's the one with a very young Melanie Griffith in it. And then he kind of went off the boil a bit, I feel, after that. But I'd definitely like to watch Little Big Man and Night Moves again, because I haven't seen those films for a long time. On to the stars of this film. I'll talk about Faye Dunaway because she opens the film, and I mean, what a way to start a film. Young Faye Dunaway, standing naked in that bedroom, staring out of the window, looking completely trapped in this tiny Texas town, looking like a fish out of water. Honestly, looks incredible. And then I thought probably through the late 60s into the mid 70s, she might have been the premier American actress working in film. When you think about the run she had, this is still the one that I think she'll always be remembered for. But some big films: Towering Inferno, Chinatown, for God's sake, 3 Days of the Condor with Redford, Network, and she's astonishingly good in Network. That might be the one she got the Oscar for, actually. I think it was. She always had this. I mean, if you look at her face is a piece of art. It is so sensual and striking, and she had this Ice Queen mentality to me. Anyway, she looks totally unattainable, totally unrelatable for me. I can't imagine rocking up to a barbecue and there's Faye Dunaway in a pair of jeans with a beer in her hand. Can't picture it. She's more likely dressed up in an evening gown, having cocktails in some swanky members only club that I wouldn't be let into. So, and that's generally the type of characters that she plays. I feel like she was perfect in Chinatown for that very reason. She really fitted that time. She looks otherworldly to me. Warren Beatty, of course. He produced this film on his own. I saw that in the credits, and he's a really enigmatic figure. I read a book about Warren Beatty a couple of years ago, and I think it's called Star. And he's one of these guys that, yes, he started out as an actor, but then he really got into producing, screenwriting, the behind the scenes management of films and getting films, greenlit and made, and then directing as well. He directed Reds, and I think the other one where he's an angel, the name escapes me now. But he really became a massively powerful figure within Hollywood. But he was actually an actor, and a pretty good actor. I think his acting gets overlooked a lot. He's really good in this film. He mightn't have been better than this one. It's usually sex appeal that people focus on. He's a striking looking guy. He gets a good scene in this where he's just wearing a singlet. He gets to flex his biceps a bit. He's in good shape, by the way. But I feel like this film, probably Shampoo, McCabe and Mrs. Miller, he was really good in as well. And then he kind of dropped away after that. Doesn't make many films through the 80s. Comes back in the late 80s when he was with Madonna, of all people. If you check out the doco that Madonna made in 90 or 91 when she was with him, there's some classic footage of him just hanging around looking very uncomfortable. Around the same time that he made Bugsy and Dick Tracy, and he was kind of back there for a minute, and then he went off and very sporadically made things. Bulworth was another interesting political type of drama. Of course, I'm forgetting the Parallax View as well. That is a brilliant film that predates All the President's Men by a couple of years, but it has all the paranoia that was evident around that Watergate period in the US. Anyway, there's some great scenes between Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway in this. It's like they're star-crossed lovers, which is interesting because Warren Beatty, and I think it's quite brave actually, that Beatty cast himself as this character who appears to be impotent, which completely cuts against the image he had in real life. And it wasn't just an image either. He's a known ladies' man. But they have great chemistry in this film, especially in the diner scene early on, where they're just looking at each other, and Faye Dunaway's glancing deeply into his eyes and feels like she'd do anything that he said. And then he tells her to pull her hair forward because he thinks, that looks better, and she just obeys immediately. Not normally something that Faye Dunaway is known for. She's a pretty feisty actress. Anyway, it could be up there with Beatty's best performance for me. But Gene Hackman shows up, I don't know, half an hour into this film. The film just shifts gears straight away. He brings this loud, chaotic Southern energy. It's the first film I can remember him being in that I've seen anyway, and he just like he's going yeehaw. This at the top of his voice, he's got this Southern accent that I haven't heard him use in other films. He plays Clyde's older brother, Buck. He's got a wife who's very conservative and completely at odds with the huge physical presence of Gene Hackman. He seems to be completely unpredictable in this film. Bonnie can't deal with him. His wife can't deal with him. Clyde spends half the time taking him aside, trying to calm him down. He just terrorizes everyone around him. And for me, it was, having seen French Connection not that long ago, which is 4 years after this film, it was like an early preview of the Popeye Doyle kind of manic energy that he shows there. And it's really the start of one of the great acting careers in American cinema. I'm a massive fan of Gene Hackman. And, he takes the prestige that he probably got from this film and just runs with it into the early 70s. Like I said, French Connection in 71. Scarecrows in, when was that? 72, 73. The Conversation, which call me crazy, but could be nearly the best film of the 70s. It's definitely up there. It's the forgotten Francis Ford Coppola film. Night Moves again with Arthur Penn in 75. And then, he goes on Lex Luthor, of course, in the Superman films. And then in the 80s, he's just as good, 90s. And then he kind of puts the cue in the rack after the Royal Tenenbaums, or not long after anyway. Tragically passed away not that long ago in pretty tough circumstances. You can go and check that out for yourself. The violence in this film, I think, is one of the key aspects as to why cinema changed. Don't quote me on this. Why would anyone quote me on anything? But I think this might be one of the first films, American films, big budget films for sure, where audiences were seeing actual bullet impacts when people get shot and blood squibs during gunfire. So I'm pretty sure before this that people would be shot and they'd just go down. Not in this one, particularly not in that final ambush. Absolutely brutal. Watching them get torn apart by that gunfire, it still shocked me. I didn't know exactly when it was coming. And then it happens and then we're done. I love that ending, actually, that there's no aftermath. There's no come down. There's no gradual, dealing with it. No emotional goodbye, no funeral, no explanation, actually. It's just fade to black. And it's quite shocking, the end. It really, I think that just as much as anything in this film makes it feel really modern. And there's lots of films in the 80s or 90s that feel, to me, older than this film because of the way that it's just served up and then they're gone and that's it. You're left to deal with it. So I love that about the film. The locations as well, like I said before, Texas, Oklahoma, Missouri, Louisiana, actually, that's the other one I'm trying to think of. All these incredible broken down towns with old men sitting outside banks, just passing the day. Dusty streets, dilapidated buildings, sort of people there like time's just passed them by. I found myself wondering how they found some of these places because it just looks so authentic. It's like Beatty and Dunaway had stepped back into the 1930s somehow and it just lends this authenticity to the film that most other films don't have. So I think, thinking back to when I first saw it, I'm pretty sure that I judged Bonnie and Clyde against all the films that I was watching at the same time. I'm not sure that I considered that it was made in 67. I would have seen it, I reckon, early 90s or mid 90s, maybe around there somewhere. And when you compare it to Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs or, I don't know, Natural Born Killers, that's probably not a bad example. It might seem tame, but it's doing a lot in this film. It's not just telling a true story about Bonnie and Clyde and showing their robberies and these exciting things and the shootouts and like I said, the blood and the violence, but it's an entertaining kind of. It's got like an energy from The Sting. Like, it's entertaining as well. It's just a rollicking good time. It just happens to involve these young, hot bank robbers who come to a pretty brutal end. And when you judge it against what cinema looked like in 67, so compare it to Dr. Dolittle, for example, or Camelot, I think that gives you the context that you need to take into account. I'm just wondering what the studios thought when they were pitched this film and then they saw the rushes and then saw the final product. Were they horrified? Were they delighted inside that it was going to shake things up? It must have been a nervous opening weekend. But look, full credit to everybody involved for letting it go out like this. I'd be interested in seeing another cut of this film with things that they took out that they thought were too over the top. I'm sure something like that exists. But anyway, we should feel indebted, I think, to Arthur Penn and Warren Beatty and everyone involved, because we got the great cinema that followed, partly as a result of this film. So you can tell from what I've said in this pod that I had an absolute blast revisiting this film. It was fast and funny and sexy and dangerous and violent and historically fascinating as well. Great performances from everybody involved. The standouts for me, I think, were Faye Dunaway and Gene Hackman. But in saying that, I think it's up there with Warren Beatty's best work as well. And nearly 60 years later, it still feels fresher than films made decades later. So I think, in summing up, some films entertain you, some films change cinema forever. This one managed to kill two birds with one stone. So there you go. Check it out if you can. I caught it on HBO Max, so it's well worth your time. Anyway, that's it for me. Bonnie and Clyde, done. Thanks for listening. See you next time.